Good morning, Dunwoody. If there's no objection, I call this special Dunwoody City Council meeting to order, 9 o'clock on August 19th. Mr. Lambert could not join us. I think everyone else is present. Councilwoman Talmadge, can you lead us in the invocation and the pledge, please? Please rise.
Council meeting, help us to make decisions which keep us faithful to our mission and reflect our values. Give us strength to hold to our purpose, wisdom to guide us, and a keen perception to lead us, and above all, keep us charitable as we deliberate. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ginger, are there any public comments?
If anyone would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. Actually, there's nobody in the Zoom app that can raise their hand at this time.
Okay, thank you. We'll have public comments again at the end of the meeting, if anyone would like to then. Sharon, would you like to read the business items?
Yes, Mayor. The first item under business items is the CARES Act Intergovernmental Agreement Approval and Initial Budgets. Jay Benicki will present.
Mayor, Council, what you've got before you today is the IGA that we talked about the previous week. And the version that you have in your hand is one that our legal team has reviewed and done some minor modifications to the county's initial proposal. I'll defer to them to go through the details of that, but it's very simple. It's pretty much a more of a bureaucratic IGA to go back and forth so that we can start working with using the funding that's available to us. The budget you have before you is currently the same one that you saw before. Basically, it breaks it down into categories based on the CARES Act items in the federal legislation. And the one you had at the last meeting had a very large contingency. Staff is still recommending to pass this budget. However, between the last meeting and now, there have been enough things from the Treasury Department where there are possibilities where more of this funding can be used for reimbursement of public safety efforts tied to COVID. And I would like to reserve the right for staff to come back at a later date and make a recommendation, if possible, to amend this budget. The plan was to do that anyway with that large of a contingency, but I'd just like to get on the record that like all good things, the program is evolving day by day, and we're getting clarification on what some of the uses can be. Staff can still start with this budget on the small things that we knew that we can do. But I'd like to come back to you at a later date, either the next council meeting or next for a revision on that.
Thank you. Is there any questions for Jay or the attorneys? Go ahead, John.
Well, Jay, or possibly Linda, if you can, I see a number of the requests and I'm seeing some large amounts. What percentage on some of these have we already expended funds? For example, the 500,000 for hazard pay. Where are we on stuff like that? Have we had a lot of expenses on that, or are we anticipating expenses? That just seems like a large amount of money, and I'm wondering what we've already allocated out of that.
I can hit this pretty easy, and Linda can probably give me the exact amount that we've tied to COVID so far. As of right now, the city has spent very little compared to the 6 million. I think the last time I saw a figure, it was 40 or 50,000. Hazard pay right now, we have not expended any. We don't have a proposal. We will bring it back to council. We're working internally on what that would look like. So nothing has been spent on that. And what you've mostly had spent is personal protective equipment, sanitary supplies. The police department has quite some equipment, and also IT has bought some laptops for those that didn't have them. So we're still at an incredibly below 1% of the entire 6 million has even been obligated out the door as of this time.
All right, well, that comes to my second question, is the fact that that amount of money, the almost, 5.5 million, has to be allocated or possibly even spent by December 31st of this year. So you have a couple months coming forward to spend an awful lot amount of money. And I just want to make sure that we're allocating the right appropriate amounts to the right things to, put it to the greatest good before that magic date.
You're correct, and the deadline is fast approaching. The cities gave their proposal to the county in May, so we've been waiting on this to get back from them. We have it in hand. Once this is approved by both sides, I think we're at a 10-day cash to us amount, and in that part, we can start working on it. One thing I did like that all the department heads did on this was they focused on things that they could spend very quickly. For instance, both police, parks, and facilities can work on equipment purchases like almost immediately with it. The hazard pay is one that will be done, and let's just say the state of emergency goes to December 31st is most likely. That will be one that, and if we use this for public safety pay in total, can go back and we can go back and check payroll from March 1st to then. So in other words, we would be spending that as we go along and get reimbursed later on it. And the economic grant program, in just talking to some of our sister jurisdictions, and one of them that actually has started an application process, that's one that is more of a, as quick as we can get it done, we can get it done. I have no fear that we can, I'm confident that we can obligate all of this before the end of the year.
All right, I just want to make sure we're doing it correctly. So thank you. I figured I'd ask those questions because, again, we do have vulnerable population grants and people that have needs out there. I just want to make sure we're allocating the right funds and that we are putting as much money as possible to the hands that need it. So thank you.
Anyone else? Joe?
The economic grant program, when will we get some details about that?
Probably within the next week or so. The mayor, Michael Starling, and myself and Eric have been going back and forth over proposals because some cities have already started this, but not every program would work for us. Our community is a little bit different, and we want to make sure that we've got at least we looked at all the options that we can.
My goal would be to get council details before, once the county signs the IGA and before we have the money. So the county has 10 days to get us, that's what they've agreed to get us the funds. Anyone else? Stacy?
Where has the county passed this? And where are we with the county and all the different cities?
So,
And what's the hang up?
well, I think the hang up is that that some cities may not agree with each other. And so I'm comfortable with what we're passing today and intend to ask staff to go ahead and forward it to the county's attorneys. And then rather than, there's lots of layers to this, but rather than wait for every city to even be paying attention to this and get on board, I think it's essential for us to just get it done. And so we're going to send it in. If our attorneys say that's okay. And also share it with the other cities as we're doing it. But
And has the county passed it?
well, so the commission, has given their attorneys the instructions to get it done, but in each IGA would have to be passed independently of it's not one IGA with 10 signatures or however many cities DeKalb has. Each of us will have our own IGA. And so DeKalb, the commission had each commissioner had lots of little issues. And I think we address, our IGA is very similar to what DeKalb put forward with a few changes. And so I'm comfortable with it. I'll share it with the other mayors, but I, with our attorney's permission, intend to go ahead and submit this.
Okay.
Jim.
Yeah, just a quick comment, of course, we're going to be approving changes to this budget as it develops. I'd just like to say that, from my perspective, most of that contingency wants to be moving to either Category 5 or Category 4 vulnerable population grants.
Okay. Yeah. And we'll have a time to flesh out this budget as a council more once I didn't want to dedicate a ton of time to it until we actually have that signed IGA. And so, but we will continue. It is, we can totally continue to talk about it. The commissioner who is insisting that we submit a budget, and I have no problem with that, his concern is that we don't duplicate efforts, and so that the county can see what the cities are spending money on and allocate their dollars differently. So I think we have done a good enough job with our categories to show them our intention. No, any other questions? Stacy?
I guess I'll move to approve entering into an IGA with DeKalb County with terms no less favorable to the city than those of the agreement presented today, subject to the approval of legal and the city manager.
Second.
Sharon, that was moved by Stacy, second by John. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, I call the question. All in favor signify by raising your hand. Sharon, that passes unanimously.
Item number 2 under business items is emergency face mask ordinance. I will read the caption of the ordinance into the record. Emergency ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Dunwoody, Georgia, under section 1.03 of the charter of the city of Dunwoody, Georgia, declaring local emergency of the novel coronavirus disease 2019 global pandemic, requiring the use of masks or face coverings in public during the COVID-19 outbreak and for other purposes.
So this is me. So as council and the public is probably aware at this point that when we passed our mask ordinance back in the middle of July, within 48 hours, the governor said we couldn't mandate masks. That has changed in his latest executive order. What was likely an inadvertent side effect of his previous executive order was that local governments could not require masks in their buildings. We kind of continued to do it. I think it was inadvertent on his part. And so now he is allowing us to require them in property that we own. Once again, he has said we cannot require businesses to require them. And so this is actually for the most part, the Georgia Municipal Association mask ordinance that they have recommended that cities can use to start with. And one of the requirements of the governor is that you have to have 100 cases per 100,000 population to be eligible to require it in your building. So as of last week, we had 280 cases per 100,000 in Dunwoody, 280-ish. DeKalb County is providing zip code data, and so I have to use some percentage basis for 30360. But even without 30360, we were at 30338 and 30346. We were close to 200. So I'm very confident that we are eligible. So with that, I will take questions. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Lynn. As far as the requirement for the local face covering, the bill, you may know this, it's not based on the city of Dunwoody. It's actually based on DeKalb County. So I believe it's the county numbers that set the threshold for the whole option. Can't hear you, Bill. You're on mute.
You're muted, Bill.
And that is reflected in the proposed ordinance.
Okay.
It's 100,000, the 100 per 100,000 in the county.
Okay. Thank you. I also looked at the governor's latest order, and the local option for face covering is only allowed when people are not able to maintain social distancing. And also looking at the governor's order, I saw on page 18 that gyms are allowed to be open with social distancing. And I saw that the amendments that, or the items that we have listed do not list gyms, where previously gyms where social distancing was allowed. So I don't believe that our current document matches the governor's authority that he has put forward. So I'd like to offer a couple amendments, basically stating that athletes who are engaged in group sports activity that allows athletes to maintain a 6-foot distance from others with only infrequent or incidental moments of closer proximity be added to our list of exceptions.
Little d.
I believe it's section 1, paragraph 2 of ours. I'll talk about paragraph E in a minute.
Oh, okay. No, I don't, John, I don't see where what you're trying to amend. Could you?
I'm sorry, yeah, section D, you're
Right,
correct.
okay.
D. I'd like to amend to section D, the sentence I just stated, that athletes, when engaged in group activities, when socially distanced, I mean, I can read the whole thing again, but it's are part of the exceptions.
So first, I think, do we need a motion before you can amend it?
I'll make the,
He can make a motion,
I'm sorry, I know what you're saying. Yeah, move to approve.
and he
Okay.
can do that with amendments as part of his motion.
Okay, so John moved to approve the ordinance, correct?
Second,
Moved by John, second by Pam. All right. Now, John, you may continue.
All right, now I'd like to make an amendment to section D of our proposed ordinance stating that, actually I have two, but the first one is that athletes who are engaged in group sports activities that allow athletes to maintain a 6-foot distance from others with only infrequent or incidental moments of closer proximity. So those would be accepted from masks for group activities that are socially distanced. And that again goes along with what the governor's executive order on page 18.
Okay. Is there a second?
second,
Second by Pam. Is there any further discussion? Whoa, maybe, yeah. Is there any further discussion? I think I'm doing this wrong.
No, you're right. We can vote on the amendment first.
Amendment, okay. Is there any further discussion on this amendment? Seeing none, I call the question on the amendment to the motion. Signify by raising hand if you support the amendment. All right, Sharon, that passes unanimously. John, you have additional.
Yes, I've also been reviewing Sandy Springs ordinance that they put forward. The mayor and council, I believe, did something the other day.
Last night.
They have a paragraph that also mirrors the governor's order that's not in ours. And I'd like to make an amendment and a motion as follows, that persons who are engaged in activity that a professional or recreational association, regulatory entity, medical association, or other public health oriented entity has determined cannot be safely conducted while wearing a mask or other covering. So basically, if you're part of an organization or a group that has rules or recommendations that you can do activities without a mask, that it be added. Our exception doesn't list that as well.
So would that be under little d as well?
That would be, I'm sorry, yes.
All right. So was that a motion?
That was a motion.
Second,
That was moved by John, second by Stacy. Any questions for John or discussion? Seeing none, I call the question on the amendment. Signify your support by raising your hand. Sharon, that's unanimous.
And then finally, I had a couple questions probably for Bill about section E 1 and 2 when it comes to the enforceability of the notice that people are not going to be compliant with our ordinance, and therefore all they need to do is put a sign up in the window saying that they're not going to be subject to enforcement. Can you explain that paragraph to us?
Yes, it's, what that means is within a building that, the property owner does not want to, comply with the ordinance, that they have to post it, that they're not, they don't wish to give notice to persons within that want to enter that building that they may be at risk. And if they don't post it, they are deemed to have consented to the enforcement of that within that business organization.
All right, so basically, Bill, I think what you're saying is that we're putting forward this ordinance with a list of requirements for those that are subject to it. If I'm a grocery store and I don't care if people wear masks or not, all I have to do is put a note in the window that says that we're not going to be subject to the enforceability of this, and therefore our ordinance means nothing in that building. Is it sort of like that?
Yes, it's consistent with what the governor has said, about the enforceability on businesses.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood that clearly.
Yes, sir.
Well, this might be for Eric. Will we have a way to communicate these changes with the businesses?
Yes, what we can do is we can do similar to what we did last time, where we can have the police distribute along with our communication department, distribute these rules, and we'll put it on our website, push it out through our weekly communications. But the most effective way, of course, will be some hand delivery to the businesses, and based on a flyer similar to what we did when the COVID event started.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Jim.
This is probably for Bill, but I just want to, this all came through fairly quickly and we haven't had a lot of time to consider, but from my perspective, what we've got here, obviously we've already got a mask ordinance sitting out there. Do we need to rescind that? That's one question.
No, sir. This will supersede it.
It expired.
Oh, okay.
Not to interrupt, it expired.
Okay. Didn't realize that much time had already passed.
Yeah.
Time flies when you're having fun. Then second, I guess the big picture, for me, the two big changes here are, the reason we need something new from what we did before, what was done before, is that, one, we're in compliance with the new EO, and the big changes to me being the business enforceability that was discussed in John's question. And then the other one is the enforcement provisions, which are basically lighter than our standard ordinance enforcement provisions. Would you agree with that? Is that a pretty good summary?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I guess, if you had to add in one or two other, what are the big changes here? What would those be, if any?
I wouldn't add any more on there. I'd just say that this is what we're doing now is a civil penalty.
Right.
And the civil penalty, as we've discussed previously, it certainly leaves less liability to us and any kinds of challenges to our ability to do this.
All right. Well, I'm in favor of this just because it's so much lighter than it's much more lighter handed than what we passed previously. So there you have it. Thank you.
Joe.
What if we don't even pass this and have this as an ordinance? Do state rules apply? State law applies?
I don't think so, because there's no state law, because you have to qualify to even be able to do the executive order, but I'll let Bill answer that.
I'd agree with the mayor. The governor's law, the governor's order would apply, but the governor's not going to have these kinds of restrictions on the mask with the masks that you have here.
For my purposes, the most important thing we're doing today is protecting our customer facing employees at City Hall.
Right. And so I know that we can mandate at the city-owned our properties now. Are we, it's not expressly stated inside this ordinance, this resolution, but in effect, our internal policy, is that what we intend to do at all of our city-owned properties?
Yes, Eric, do you want to answer that as you're drinking water? Sorry.
No, it's all good. Yes. To answer that question, the short answer is yes. And also with the amendments that John Hennigan did also for the sports players, you know, that further enhances and reinstates our seriousness of face coverings in the city of Dunwoody.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Seeing none, we can vote on the motion that's already on the floor, the amended motion. John, did you have something?
Yeah, move to approve with amendments.
Second,
Okay. Moved by John, second by Pam. All in favor? Signify by raising your hand. The motion passes. The, hold on, let me get back to my agenda. Ginger, are there any public comments?
If anyone would like to make a comment, please raise your hand in the Zoom app. There are no hands raised at this time.
Thank you. Eric, any comments?
No further comments. Thank you.
Okay. City Council, any comments? No, just my only request of our citizens is to continue to wear your mask and to be kind by wearing, to continue our kindness by wearing masks so that we protect those who have to be at work, who don't have the option of staying home. And with that, I could use a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Moved by Jim,
second.
second by Pam. Raise your hand if you are in favor of the motion to adjourn. Thank you all. We will see you Monday.